I'm not shocked and surprised, actually. I think it was only a matter of time, unfortunately. Listen, we're dealing day to day. If it wasn't for the professionalism of prison officers in the job that they're doing, day in, day out, would be on her knees.
And let me ask you first, your view. Does this jailbreak count as evidence that our prison system, our prison estate, is in some way not quite fit for purpose?
John, we've been saying that for quite a long while now. And it gives me no great pleasure, actually, in saying it, because I want, as General Secretary of the Prison Officers Association, I want a successful prison service that actually rehabilitates people. But unfortunately, we're not there. And that's because of the austerity years, the cuts, the brutal budget cuts that we had, and getting rid of 10,000 prison officers, in effect.
Yeah. But well, how far then will this question of staffing have played a role? We don't know all the details yet, but how far will it have played a role in this prison escape? There was something like 69 officers at Wandsworth for 1,600 inmates. Now, that really does look as if we've got a case of officers being overstretched.
And it's been that way for a substantial amount of time, not just at Wandsworth, but across the country. So Wandsworth yesterday, it could be another prison tomorrow, unfortunately. And your stats are pretty sound, in actual fact, because I spoke to the Wandsworth POA committee this morning just to see how many staff were on duty. And you're absolutely right, 1,600 prisoners. And there's supposed to be a certified normal accommodation of just over 900, which means that's the proper amount of prisoners that should be at Wandsworth, but they are grossly overcrowded by 600 odd prisoners that are sharing cells, doubling up for cells that should be for one person. And to have 70 staff on duty for 1,600 prisoners just demonstrates to your listeners the sort of stress that my members are under on a daily basis.
Right, so I'm seriously understaffed, seriously overstretched, the jail seriously overcrowded. But you'd think, Steve, wouldn't you, as a layman, one would imagine that vans would be routinely always checked on their way in and out of a prison.
John, you're absolutely correct. And I'm not trying to deflect away from basic security. And there will be an investigation into that. And I wouldn't want to speculate what has gone wrong, because that would be grossly unfair. But, when my members are under pressure to try and get the job done, unfortunately, shortcuts are taken, and security isn't always the first issue. And I've been into lots of jails in the last few years, and it surprises me at the lack of security, basic security measures. And it seems that they want to run regimes at all cost. Well, I say maybe this is the issue now, that nobody wants to ever see a prisoner escape from prison. They're there for a reason, to keep the public safe and to get justice and so forth. So it disheartens me that this has happened, but it's few and far between, thank goodness. Lessons will need to be learned, but I hope government are listening loud and clearly.
Now tell me then, Steve.
They cut far too much in the prison service.
Okay, we hear what you're saying. Now tell me, what sort of security shortcuts have you seen? You say you've seen them yourselves at this jail or other jails. Well,
I sort of think there's not enough security, like perimeter checks and things like that have been cut back. Different things. The day-to-day security, people aren't getting enough time to do the security task that they should be doing. So, for example, the security of a prison is foremost in my mind, always has been. But getting the time to do the basics, such as like a cell fabric check, right? For instance, I've noticed that sometimes prison officers will rush it because there's not enough time in the day.
To do what?
To check the fabric of of a cell or an area fabric check, because the pressure's on them.
What is a fabric check?
Well, a fabric check would be checking the locks, the bolts, the bars, the fabric of the cell to ensure it's not tampered with, and so forth. But
the most basic conditions for keeping prisoners secure.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. But because prison officers, there's the lack of them to get the job done. So, for example, at Wandsworth, let's just take it Wandsworth because it's a topic at this moment in time. If you've got 70 prison officers on duty, and there should be about 120 prison officers on duty on that given day, then unfortunately prison officers have been rushed about the place in order to get certain tasks done. And my message is quite clear, that you can only do one task at a time, and security is fundamental. So if it takes you 20 minutes to do that one cell, to satisfy yourself that it's done correctly, it takes 20 minutes. Nobody should be harping on at someone to say, be quicker, get that job done, because you're required in visits, or you're required elsewhere.
But there are shortcuts, and jobs are cut short. It sounds, Steve, as if you're not really shocked and surprised this break has taken place.
No, I'm not shocked and surprised, actually. I think it was only a matter of time, unfortunately. Listen, we're dealing day to day. If it wasn't for the professionalism of prison officers in the job that they're doing, day in, day out, would be on her knees. And I say that in all sincerity. And that's why this trade union has been asking, and the Conservative government pledged it in their manifesto, the last manifesto, to have a royal commission into the criminal justice system, and they've used COVID as an excuse not to do it. Now, the reason they haven't done it is because they don't want to know the answers from this royal commission. So from our policing to our courts to probation to the prison service, it's in crisis. I would see it day in, day out.
So you saw this coming. You saw this coming, and you think ministers, for example, are sweeping the problem under the carpet.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, to the dramatic cuts that we've had between 2010 right up to about 2015-16, they were draconian. There were £900 million taken out of the MOJ in prisons between those times. The loss of 10,000 prison officers to redundancy, replaced, and I'll give the government credit because they have started recruiting, but they can't retain. They can't retain because the wage then was set too low for new recruits. We've made some track with the pay review body, given over the last 2 years decent pay rises to new staff, but ignoring, shall we say, experienced staff, so that those new grades caught up on pay.
A familiar story, this in public service. Let me just ask you one more, Steve. I mean, recent days you'll have seen a German court has refused to extradite a prisoner to this country, saying they couldn't be sure this prisoner would be held in decent conditions in line with human rights requirements. I find that absolutely shocking. Do you?
John, I find it shocking. I don't know all the ins and outs of that particular case. I've read the headlines. I don't know if there's a wee bit of politics going on there, but it's up to the government to agree extradition laws with other countries. But it just shows you how far our prison system has fallen in the last 13 years. And it gives me no pleasure in saying that. We're 2,400 prison officers short still that we had in 2010.
Steve Gillan, really good to talk to you. Thank you.
Very pleasure.